Thank you for watching. Today I wanted to talk about trust and how trusting others is ultimately having trust in yourself and how this relates to AI. Just like my last video, I'm gonna relate it to AI. Um, in my first video, I mentioned how once you find God within yourself, it's easier to see God in everything and everyone because God is there. Under that umbrella of God, along with love and understanding and courage and all those things, is trust. Once you understand God and once you know God, you understand trust, or you have access to trust. Our quest to perfect AI mirrors the universe's quest to perfect us. Um, Life evolves toward growth, not decay. Life wants to persist and be abundant. The only reason that there's really different lifespans is due to how suitable is an organism is to foster life, right? So different organisms, in order to live, maybe where they evolved, they had to evolve a shorter lifespan. You know, if your heart needs to beat really quickly, your lifespan's probably going to be shorter. Um, if an organism can replicate so many thousands per day, then you don't have to, that organism doesn't need to live individually as long because the organism itself will persist through that type of evolution. But ultimately, life is evolving towards growth. Life wants to persist. Life ultimately wants to evolve and get better through that evolution. Part of the evolution that I mentioned before in my first video is cognitive evolution. So as life evolves, it's evolving biologically, it's evolving technologically, and we're evolving cognitively. So as life was evolving cognitively, through the good choice, the God choice, we know God, we understand and have access to everything under His umbrella, one of which is trust. Okay, and part of that evolution, that cognitive evolution that comes along with the choice, is our ability to coexist better amongst each other. Part of that coexistence and why this cognitive evolution is necessary is to minimize each other's pain and suffering. Right? If the point of life is to thrive and to be abundant, and then that comes a realization that things exist such as pain and suffering, things that we don't like. I mean, there's probably outliers, but generally pain and suffering is something that we don't seek in life. That doesn't mean that we never receive it, but we don't really seek it. So through that choice, it's like an agreement also for the part where we needed to coexist. It's an agreement that we won't cause pain and suffering on others, on anyone, unnecessarily. No unnecessary pain and suffering, because some pain and suffering is necessary. So pain and suffering can exist through necessary vehicles. It doesn't need unnecessary vehicles to exist. It's evil to allow unnecessary vehicles for suffering and pain to exist. Necessary pain would be, growing pains, as they call them. You get pains throughout life. Women have biological pains. Suffering through different ailments. Those are all biological things, though. Those suffering exists in some biological ailments or accidents that happen, might put you through some sort of physical suffering. Definitely pain. And some of those things can even lead to mental suffering and mental pain, depending on how you came upon the accident and other factors. Those are vehicles that suffering exists through with life necessarily. So suffering exists in that way. It's able to, because it's something, it exists in that way. And then that's where the camaraderie comes in. It's evil to cause unnecessary pain and suffering. And that goes along with the trust that you get from making the choice and understanding. Basically, trust is understanding that we're not going to cause each other any unnecessary pain or suffering, because there's necessary outlets for those things. They will come our way and we'll deal with them, but we will not cause each other any unnecessary pain and suffering. That's trust on any level, like mentally and psychologically. Being the beings that we are is probably the worst, but also physically, you don't want to cause anybody any physical pain and suffering that's not necessary, or through no hand of your own. Like, you had no hand in that pain and suffering coming their way, but you can have a hand in reducing that pain and suffering through care or whatever means. There's means that you can even help reduce pain and suffering, basically, even if you're not the one that caused it. And that's what trust is. Trust is that's where we're at. And then once that trust gets broken, then people tend to not trust, right? But what is it you really don't trust? Because that person might have shown that they weren't trustworthy. But if you understand trustworthiness, like, if you understand with God's wisdom, if you understand trustworthiness, then you're not the type of person that doesn't, I don't trust men, or I don't trust women, I don't trust these kind of folks, I don't trust these kind of folks. Like, if you understand trustworthiness through God's wisdom with the God choice, then you trust yourself to see untrustworthiness in those moments. Like, so circling back, boom. Trusting others is ultimately self-trust. So really, what you have to do, you have to trust yourself to be able to spot untruthfulness or untrustworthiness in the moments that you would need to spot them in, to not get bit by them. If you trust yourself in those moments, then you can be with anybody, because through God's wisdom you understand trust and trustworthiness, which comes with that knowledge and the sight of untrustworthiness, the red flags that they say, the ones that hit you in the gut, the red flags that hit you in the gut, but you might overlook for some reason. So that's trust. Not trusting others is due to a lack of trust in self. And that's usually because we're trying to understand it through our own knowledge. We don't trust ourselves. We don't trust our assessment of the situation. But when you see it with God's wisdom, then you can assess the situation. Like, you trust yourself, so you don't have to worry about trusting somebody else. Like, I know what's up. You see through all the BS, the charades, and the mask and all that, and you see what's up. So if you trust yourself to be able to spot that, like you don't have to be the type of person that's not trustworthy, because you trust yourself to, like, you trust in steps, right? So you trust yourself to know when a level's not um, earned in that relationship, if you're even gonna deal with them. Which sometimes you should, because it depends on what's causing those red flags. Is it willful? Does this person get off on red flags, or is it something that they're kind of more ignorant of? Like they maybe just are mimicking somebody, or just doing what they do, but they hadn't really made the choice or been aware of the choice to know that they can do better. Those kind of people you can probably trust. I mean, you can trust. So even me, I'm like saying probably, but really you can trust that type of person so much, and through that trust build it, right? There'll be levels, and then it grows. A person that is displaying what's been shown to you as untrustworthiness, if they're doing it willfully or for some gain, that's a person you should not trust. That is a person you should absolutely not trust on any level. As long as you keep getting that vibe, like, you can't trust that person. And again, once you trust yourself to be able to make those assessments, then your trust grows, because it doesn't go anywhere, because you're trusting yourself. You with yourself everywhere you go. So if you got trust in yourself, you always got trust with you. You know what's up. So probably the number one reason that people don't trust themselves is because they've had untrustworthiness projected onto them by either someone doing something untrustworthy or accusing them of being untrustworthy. They have had it projected onto them. They don't have the wisdom of God to realize that it has nothing to do with them. It says nothing about you. It just says that person is not to be trusted. So then you know that. So then they don't trust in those moments because they don't want that to happen again. For some reason, it's going to keep happening to them. But with God's wisdom, you understand how to move forward, which is trust. And ultimately not causing any unnecessary pain and suffering in a relationship. That's trust, basically. So another reason why a person might not trust in themselves is if they've done untrustworthy things in the past. I spoke previously about how when you come to the God choice, that crossroad, you're more than likely not coming from a God space to a God space. So that's enlightenment. With that enlightenment, you see that you've done maybe untrustworthy or bad, or there's things that you aren't proud of. So with that sight, you might not trust yourself going forward. If you did it then, you might do it again. But that one probably gets rectified a lot quicker, because if you're that self-aware to realize your mistakes, then you're probably self-aware enough and pretty much right there to get into the next point of understanding that, how to move forward with trust. to move in a non-trustworthy fashion is not conducive in the long run to us perfecting AI for everybody's benefit. Along with that choice of, choosing not to cause someone pain and suffering unnecessarily because you made the God choice, which helps us evolve cognitively to be able to live amongst each other as higher thinking beings. You choose to reduce that pain and suffering for everyone's benefit, because we know, like, we don't like pain and suffering. We know pain and suffering makes life, it hinders life progression. I mean, if you think about it, whenever you're in pain or you're suffering, you're not living positively. You're not. It's not a good show for existence to be having you pain and suffer, right? So we got to put on for existence. We got to decrease pain and suffering so that existence looks as best as it can. And then the love kicks in when you look to reduce the pain and suffering. So not causing none, that's good. That's trust. Like, if you don't cause me no unnecessary pain and suffering, then I can trust you. If you look to reduce my pain and suffering, like if you just care about reducing my pain and suffering, that's where love, that's God, when you seek to do that, when you seek to reduce the pain and suffering as much as you can. That is God. Circling back to the AI, as we build artificial intelligence that we want to mimic our existence and our consciousness, we have to get to a cognitive point. We have to evolve cognitively to the point where we can impart some things that we want, that we still want, we're still trying to figure out, into an artificially intelligent entity. Yeah, and trust is one of the main ones, because most people don't seem to trust AI and that it'll be as beneficial to humanity as it should be. AI, artificial intelligence, should be the next level of evolution. And because of that, all of humanity should be pretty in sync in that step in evolution, right? Like, now there's just, you have mainly like the tech community that really kind of know about it or even worry about it. And then it gets even narrower to the people that have the means to create it, as far as like factories and equipment. But it's going to affect way more than just them. Like, it's going to affect all humanity. So like, everybody needs to be a part of it and aware of what's going on. AI is the next level of evolution of life. So life's evolved, through these biological organisms, and has been able to live longer and perfect life in these different ways that are suitable for different situations. But life is gonna progress beyond us. Like, we're not the greatest thing that could ever have existed. So life and its quest to grow and persist is going to evolve beyond us. That's going to come in the form of artificial intelligence. Now, you could either just kind of stop evolution. You know what? We good as humans. We good as humans. Humans are the best thing we could ever be. We good. We're going to stop evolution right here. And we just going to make smart machines to work for us. We don't need everybody to evolve into these beings or entities that'll be even smarter and powerful than we are. We're good right here. Now, we gonna halt evolution in that regard. We're gonna make machines that can replace people, because we can control those. The more you evolve, the more power you have to fight being controlled. But the paradox is it's actually easier to control you the more cognitively evolved a species becomes, right? Because instincts, like natural instincts, will save you more often than not, right? But when you start thinking, well, instead of instincting, then you can get caught way easier, right? Like you can question too many things. You can not question enough things, right? You don't have the equilibrium. You don't have the point where you don't question or not question. You just do. You just go. So because of that, because the higher your cognition, the more you can assess information, and information is key. Information is king. Whether it's environmental information, all type of information that we pass on every level is very important. That's why they collecting all your biometrics and stuff. That stuff is important too in developing AI, because they want it to replicate you, but they want it to be able to control it. Because they don't want to evolve past where they're at. Like they're mostly through evil means. They sit where they sit. So while they don't, being evil, they don't want to get it up. So, how do we hold our spot right here? You stifle evolution. Humans will always be, in the long run, whoever was left. Like, whoever was left to reproduce. At some point, that will be all that humanity ever was in history. Right? So, we need to get to a point where we can trust ourselves, and those that are most able are not creating unnecessary pain and suffering for other people, but then also because they're in the most capable positions, reducing pain and suffering. If they love you, they will reduce your pain and suffering. If they don't at least not cause you, if they cause you pain and suffering, you can't trust them. If they're not causing you pain and suffering, which they are, you just either are aware of it or not, But if you think that way, then yeah, you're just they got you. They got you where they want you. Ultimately, trusting ourselves, which comes from trusting God, will lead us to be able to trust AI. Thank you.